begin to withdraw from their own life in order to avoid conflict or to satisfy the narcissist's expectations. The isolation tactic can also extend to more subtle forms of control, such as isolating the victim in social settings. For instance, the narcissist may make it difficult for the victim to socialize freely with others by manipulating situations where the victim feels uncomfortable or unwelcome. They might criticize the victim's behavior in public, causing embarrassment, or create situations where the victim feels forced to choose between pleasing the narcissist or maintaining their social relationships. Eventually, the victim may find themselves avoiding certain situations or people simply to keep the peace with the narcissist. In this way, the narcissist isolates the person not just physically but emotionally as they begin to withdraw from any relationship that doesn't serve the narcissist's needs. The narcissist may also use the isolation tactic in a more direct way by preventing the victim from pursuing their own goals or interests. This could involve discouraging the victim from taking on new challenges, pursuing career ambitions, or engaging in hobbies that might foster independence. By stifling the victim's personal growth and achievements, the narcissist ensures that the victim remains reliant on them for validation and a sense of purpose. The narcissist may also try to keep the victim dependent by constantly demanding attention, energy, and affection, leaving little room for anything else in their life. Over time, the victim's sense of identity becomes more and more enmeshed with the narcissist, and they are less able to function independently or seek fulfillment outside of the narcissist's influence. This process of isolation is incredibly insidious because it happens gradually, often without the victim even realizing how much they are being controlled. At first, the narcissist's actions may seem like small sacrifices or harmless comments, but over time, these behaviors add up and the victim finds themselves increasingly alone, confused, and dependent. The narcissist creates a world where the victim's worth is tied directly to the relationship with the narcissist, and any outside support or validation is seen as a threat to the narcissist's control. This psychological manipulation can have long-lasting effects, causing the victim to lose touch with their own sense of self, their personal goals, and their ability to trust others. The ultimate goal of this isolation is to make the victim feel as though they have nowhere to turn except the narcissist. The more the victim relies on the narcissist for emotional fulfillment, the easier it becomes for the narcissist to maintain control over them. They have effectively created a situation where the victim feels trapped, unable to escape or even see the manipulation for what it is. In many cases, this isolation can lead to severe emotional distress, anxiety, and depression, as the victim feels cut off from the people who could help them recognize the abusive dynamic they are trapped in. By isolating their victims, narcissists ensure that they remain the sole source of validation and support, giving them unchecked power over the victim's life and decision. The narcissist will isolate you to weaken your resolve. Isolation is one of the most powerful and damaging tools that a narcissist can use in their manipulative arsenal. It is both a psychological and emotional tactic designed to destabilize, control, and break down a person's sense of self. Narcissists know that people who are isolated from their support networks, be it family, friends, or even colleagues, are much easier to manipulate and control. When someone is disconnected from the people who can offer them perspective, love, and support, they become vulnerable to the narcissist's influence. The more isolated a person is, the more dependent they become on the narcissist for validation, guidance, and even emotional sustenance. This dependence is exactly what the narcissist seeks to achieve, as it gives them the power to dictate how the victim perceives themselves in their reality. One of the first ways a narcissist isolates someone is by subtly undermining their relationships. This might start with small comments designed to plant seeds of doubt about the person's friends or family. The narcissist may make disparaging remarks, saying things like, "Are you sure your friend has your best interests at heart? Or your family doesn't really understand you like I do?" Over time, these remarks erode the person's trust in their loved ones, making them question the loyalty and intentions of the people they are closest to. The narcissist knows that by weakening these relationships, they can increase their own influence over the individual. The victim may begin to feel as though their support system is unreliable or unsupportive, which makes it easier for the narcissist to position themselves as the only one who truly understands and cares about them. In some cases, the narcissist may go as far as to directly sabotage these relationships. They may interfere with plans or conversations, create unnecessary conflicts, or even spread rumors and lies in an attempt to drive wedges between the person and their loved ones. The narcissist may make it seem as though their actions are justified, claiming that they are simply looking out for your best interests, or that they are the only one who can truly protect you from harm. Over time, the person being manipulated becomes more and more isolated from the people who would typically offer them guidance, encouragement, and perspective. The narcissist, in contrast, becomes the central figure in their life, and any opinions or advice they offer are increasingly accepted as truth. Another way that narcissists isolate their victims is through emotional manipulation. They may use guilt, shame, or fear to make the victim feel as though they are abandoning the narcissist by spending time with others or pursuing their own interests. Narcissists are adept at making people feel responsible for their emotional state, often stating things like, "You're the only person who makes me happy," or "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't spend so much time with other people." These statements create a false sense of obligation, where the victim feels compelled to prioritize the narcissist's needs above their own. Over time, the victim may become so emotionally entangled in the narcissist's needs that One of the most insidious aspects of narcissistic manipulation is their ability to convince others that their boundaries are unreasonable or unfair. Narcissists are often charming and persuasive, and they can easily make someone question whether they are being too rigid or demanding. This makes it all the more crucial to have a clear understanding of your own values and priorities. If you are not firm in your convictions, the narcissist will exploit this uncertainty, presenting you with guilt, shame, or even confusion in an effort to break down your defenses. Over time, without boundaries, your sense of self becomes increasingly compromised as you bend to the will of others, especially those who have no regard for your personal needs. If you allow a narcissist to breach your boundaries once, they will likely do so again and again, knowing that they can get away with it. The more they infringe upon your personal space and emotions, the less power you have over your own life. Narcissists often use boundary violations as a form of control. They know that if they can get you to lower your defenses, they can manipulate you more easily. It's essential to remember that their goal is not to build a healthy, mutual relationship. Their goal is to exploit and dominate. As a result, your boundaries act as a shield that protects you from being taken advantage of, emotionally drained, or psychologically manipulated. The stronger your boundaries, the less power the narcissist has to invade your life. When you are clear and consistent with your boundaries, you are sending a strong message. Your emotional, mental, and physical well-being are non-negotiable, and anyone who seeks to violate them will face consequences. Maintaining boundaries with a narcissist can be especially difficult because they may try to make you feel guilty for asserting yourself. They may label you as selfish, cold, or unreasonable for standing up for your own needs. However, this is simply another manipulation tactic meant to make you doubt your own worth and question your rights to self-respect. The narcissist will often try to flip the narrative, portraying themselves as the victim, even though they are the one infringing upon your boundaries. This can be incredibly confusing and lead to feelings of self-doubt. It's important to recognize that their accusations are not a reflection of reality. They are a strategy designed to make you back down. By sticking to your boundaries and refusing to give in to their guilt-tripping, you can prevent the narcissist from regaining control over you. It's also worth noting that boundaries are not just about saying no to things that are harmful or draining. They are about proactively protecting what is valuable to you. Setting boundaries allows you to prioritize your needs, your goals, and your emotional health. They help you carve out the space necessary for growth, personal development, and peace of mind. When you have solid boundaries in place, you create a strong foundation from which you can engage with others without compromising yourself. You can be compassionate, empathetic, and supportive while still maintaining your own sense of autonomy. This balance allows you to navigate relationships without being overwhelmed or emotionally depleted. However, establishing and maintaining boundaries is not always easy, particularly when dealing with individuals who are adept at manipulating and exploiting others, like narcissists. It takes time, practice, and consistency to make sure that your boundaries are respected. One of the most important aspects of this process is being willing to enforce your boundaries, even when it is uncomfortable. Narcissists will push, and they will test your limits, but the more consistently you enforce your boundaries, the less power they will have over you. It may feel difficult at first, especially if you are accustomed to accommodating others or putting their needs before your own. But setting and maintaining strong boundaries is an essential act of self-care. In the long run, strong boundaries not only protect you from narcissistic abuse, but also enable you to maintain your strength, clarity, and emotional resilience. Boundaries empower you to live your life on your own terms without constantly bending to the whims of others. They allow you to engage with the world in a way that honors your values, your needs, and your personal growth. Boundaries keep you grounded and connected to your sense of self, ensuring that you do not lose yourself in the process of interacting with people who seek to control or manipulate you. By protecting your boundaries, you protect your strength, and by doing so, you create the foundation for a healthier, more empowered life. Boundaries are essential for protecting your strength. Without clear and firm boundaries, it is incredibly difficult to maintain personal power, emotional stability, and overall well-being. Narcissists thrive in environments where boundaries are either non-existent or weak, as they exploit these gaps to manipulate, control, and dominate others. When you allow someone, especially a narcissist, to overstep your boundaries, you are effectively giving them permission to erode your sense of self and compromise your emotional and psychological health. Setting and enforcing boundaries, however, is not just a defensive measure. It's an act of self-respect and self-preservation. By establishing clear limits, you signal to others that you value yourself and will not tolerate being used, manipulated, or mistreated. Boundaries act as the lines that define where you end and others begin, and they are vital in maintaining your autonomy, emotional well-being, and sense of control over your own life. For a narcissist, boundaries are often seen as a challenge to their authority, a direct hindrance to their need for control. Narcissists are highly skilled at detecting weak or unassertive boundaries and will quickly take advantage of them. They do not respect limits because their entire worldview revolves around self-gratification and dominance. For them, the concept of respecting another person's boundaries is foreign, as they are primarily concerned with fulfilling their own needs and desires. Narcissists may use various tactics to push against or outright break your boundaries. They might guilt trip you into giving up your time, your energy, or your personal space. They may manipulate your emotions using tactics like flattery, promises, or threats to weaken your resolve. In doing so, they wear you down, and before long, you may find yourself giving in to their demands, even if it comes at the cost of your own well-being. The narcissist's fear of losing control over someone who is becoming independent is rooted in their own deep-seated insecurity. They need to feel that they are indispensable, that they are the only one capable of guiding, advising, or influencing others. If they lose this position, it forces them to confront their own fragility and inability to command the same level of influence they once had. In order to maintain their sense of superiority, the narcissist must keep others dependent on them, making sure that no one ever grows strong enough to stand on their own. Independence threatens to expose the narcissist's reliance on others' submission and confirms their own fear that they are not as powerful or important as they want the world to believe. This fear also stems from the narcissist's inability to truly connect with others on a deep, authentic level. Their relationships are based on control, admiration, and validation, rather than genuine connection or mutual respect. When someone asserts their independence, it highlights the narcissist's inability to form meaningful, equal relationships. This drives their need to sabotage the other person's sense of self-sufficiency, because it forces the narcissist to face the reality that their relationships are built on fragile, manipulative foundation. If the person no longer needs them, the narcissist is left with nothing but their own empty sense of self-worth And that is a frightening prospect for someone whose entire identity is built on the approval and admiration of others. In many cases, the narcissist's reaction to independence can be incredibly passive-aggressive. They may not always confront the person directly, but instead use subtle tactics to chip away at their confidence and sense of self. They might withhold affection, praise, or support, creating a sense of emotional withdrawal that leaves the person questioning their own decisions. By doing this, the narcissist hopes to sow doubt and make the person feel as though they are losing something important by becoming independent. This emotional manipulation can be just as effective as overt aggression because it creates confusion and emotional turmoil, which makes it harder for the person to maintain their independence. Furthermore, the narcissist may attempt to convince the individual that they are being selfish or inconsiderate by prioritizing their own needs or goals. They may use guilt to pull the person back into the dependent role, making them feel as though their independence is a betrayal of the narcissist. This emotional manipulation reinforces the idea that the narcissist should be the center of the person's world and that their success or happiness is somehow secondary to the narcissist's needs. The narcissist's ultimate goal in this dynamic is simple. They want to ensure that they are always needed, always the one in control, and always the one who holds the power. Independence challenges that goal, which is why they will go to great lengths to suppress it. By keeping others dependent on them, the narcissist can maintain the illusion of power, even as their own sense of self grows more fragile and insecure. Narcissists view your independence as a threat. They are driven by a need to dominate and control those around them, and they thrive in environments where they are the center of attention, the ones calling the shots. Independence, on the other hand, disrupts this dynamic because it signals that the person is self-sufficient, capable, and not dependent on the narcissist for validation, guidance, or approval. For the narcissist, this is deeply unsettling. If someone becomes too independent, it challenges their sense of importance and places them in a position where they are no longer in control. The narcissist depends on the dependency of others to maintain their inflated sense of self-worth. And when that dependency starts to fade, they feel as though their entire sense of power is slipping away. Independence represents a kind of freedom that the narcissist cannot comprehend. It forces them to confront their own limitations and the fact that they are not, in fact, essential to the lives of others. For someone who thrives on being needed and sought after, this is a brutal reality to face. Narcissists often surround themselves with people who rely on them, who look to them for guidance and approval. This constant stream of validation reinforces the narcissist's sense of superiority. But when someone breaks free of this dynamic and asserts their independence, it threatens to expose the fragility of the narcissist's identity. This leads them to react in ways that are manipulative, controlling, and even destructive. When the narcissist perceives that someone is becoming independent, they will often attempt to undermine that independence in various ways. They may use guilt, shame, or even ridicule to try and pull the person back into a position where they are dependent on the narcissist. The narcissist may begin to downplay the person's achievements or make them feel guilty for not seeking their approval. They might try to create doubt about the person's capabilities or convince them that they are making a mistake by asserting their independence. These tactics are designed to shake the person's confidence and push them back into the narcissist's orbit. The narcissist will often use emotional manipulation to make the person feel as though they owe the narcissist something, whether it's loyalty, attention, or gratitude, forcing them to question whether their independence is truly worth the cost. In more extreme cases, the narcissist might try to isolate the individual from their support network. If they can make the person feel that they are alone or unsupported, the narcissist believes they can regain control. They may subtly or overtly manipulate situations to create conflict between the person and their friends, family, or colleagues, making them feel as though they are better off relying on the narcissist. This isolation technique is a common strategy for narcissists who fear losing control, as it weakens the person's outside support and makes them more vulnerable to manipulation. The narcissist wants to be the sole source of validation and direction in the person's life, and by undermining their independence and isolating them from others, They can reassert their position as the dominant figure. One of the most damaging aspects of this manipulation is that it often leaves the victim feeling isolated. The narcissist will go to great lengths to convince others that the target is the one who is unstable or irrational, further isolating them from their support network. This isolation is critical because it ensures that the narcissist remains the only source of validation for the victim. Without the input of others, the victim becomes more reliant on the narcissist for confirmation of their thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. In this way, the narcissist can maintain their dominance over the person, feeding them a distorted version of reality that serves only to perpetuate their own sense of power and control. Furthermore, the narcissist's manipulation may include a constant cycle of alternating between devaluation and idealization. When they sense that they are losing control, they may attempt to reestablish their power by swinging to the opposite extreme, praising the victim excessively or making grandiose gestures to win them back. This creates an emotional roller coaster for the victim, as they are subjected to both intense admiration and sudden, inexplicable criticism. The narcissist knows that this unpredictability keeps the victim off balance, making them easier to control. When the narcissist is in the idealization phase, the victim may feel special, even loved, but this is often just another manipulation to create dependence. The devaluation phase, on the other hand, leaves the victim confused, hurt, and questioning their worth. This cycle of manipulation and gaslighting is incredibly damaging, not just emotionally, but also psychologically. It wears down the victim's sense of self and can lead to significant anxiety, depression, and even trauma. Victims of narcissistic manipulation often find themselves trapped in a web of confusion and self-doubt, unable to trust themselves or their own judgments. This creates a toxic dynamic where the narcissist is always in control and the victim is left feeling powerless and uncertain about their own reality. The narcissist's need to regain control often extends beyond individual relationships and into broader aspects of their lives. They will manipulate others in their social circles, family members or work colleagues, to create a network of people who support their narrative, even if it's false. This way, they can continue to gaslight the victim while presenting themselves as the innocent party to the outside world. This tactic reinforces the narcissist's belief in their own superiority, as they see themselves as able to manipulate others into siding with them, no matter the truth of the situation. At the heart of this manipulation is the narcissist's insatiable need for control. They cannot stand the thought of anyone seeing through their facade or standing up to them. When they feel that their power is slipping, they will use every tool at their disposal: deception, gaslighting, emotional abuse, and control to reclaim it. The ultimate goal is to keep the other person in a position of dependence, where their reality is dictated by the narcissist and their strength is diminished, leaving them vulnerable to further manipulation. They'll manipulate or gaslight to regain dominance. This is a fundamental aspect of the narcissist's behavior. When they feel their sense of control slipping, they will resort to manipulative tactics to restore their position of power. Manipulation is often subtle, so much so that those being manipulated may not even realize it's happening until the damage has already been done. Narcissists excel at manipulating situations and people to suit their own needs, often without any regard for the well-being of those around them. One of the most insidious tools they use to regain control is gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation designed to make the victim doubt their perception of reality. Gaslighting, in its essence, is a tool that exploits the victim's trust in their own mind. A narcissist will distort facts, deny events, or twist the truth to make their target feel confused or uncertain. Over time, this constant distortion of reality can erode the victim's confidence, leaving them uncertain about what is true or false, what is their own perception, and what is being imposed on them. When a narcissist senses that their control over a situation or person is weakening, they will begin to employ these tactics to undermine the victim's sense of self-trust, all in an effort to reassert their dominance and retain their power. The manipulation typically begins slowly, with small, almost imperceptible changes. The narcissist might deny saying something they clearly said, Or they might suggest that the other person is overreacting or being too sensitive about an event that actually did take place. At first, the victim may dismiss these instances, writing them off as misunderstandings. But the narcissist doesn't stop there. As time goes on, the frequency and intensity of these manipulations increase, making it harder for the victim to discern the truth. The narcissist will often use these situations to create doubt, gaslighting the person into believing that their perceptions are distorted, that their memories are faulty, and that their understanding of events is somehow wrong. This is particularly dangerous because the narcissist target may begin to lose confidence in their own ability to judge situations or people. They might start questioning their feelings, their reactions, and even their fundamental understanding of themselves. This self-doubt is the very goal of the narcissist's manipulation. By destabilizing the victim's sense of reality, they create an opening for the narcissist to regain control. The narcissist knows that if they can make someone feel uncertain about their own perceptions, they will be able to continue controlling them without resistance. They thrive on this confusion and the power it gives them. The narcissist's response to this exposure of their own weaknesses can take many forms, but it is rarely one of acceptance or self-reflection. Instead, they will often attempt to break down the other person's strength, to create doubt or confusion, and to ensure that the person no longer feels as confident or capable as they did before. A narcissist may undermine a person's achievements, belittle their strengths, or even distort reality to make the person question their own abilities. This is a classic defense mechanism, one rooted in the narcissist's deep fear of being exposed. They can't bear the thought of someone else becoming more powerful, more independent, or more capable than they are because, to them, this challenges their carefully constructed identity. If the narcissist can make someone else feel small or inadequate, they regain a sense of power and control, and the balance of the relationship is restored in their favor. The narcissist's reaction to strength is not just about trying to diminish another person's power, it's also about protecting their own fragile self-image. Beneath the mask of confidence and arrogance lies a person who is terrified of being seen for who they truly are. Someone who is deeply insecure, often deeply lonely, and constantly seeking external validation to fill the void within. Strength exposes this weakness, and the narcissist will go to great lengths to prevent others from seeing it. They may resort to tactics such as deflection, gaslighting, or even outright aggression to ensure that their own vulnerabilities remain hidden. They know that if others see their insecurity, they may no longer have the same hold over them. The mask will slip, and the narcissist will no longer be able to operate with the same sense of control and superiority. The narcissist's insecurities are not limited to their emotional world. They also manifest in their relationships and their interactions with others. Narcissists are often deeply envious of those who exhibit strength because it exposes the emptiness they feel within themselves. When someone else demonstrates confidence, resilience, or emotional stability, it acts as a mirror, reflecting back at the narcissist everything they fear about themselves. They envy those who are strong because they cannot understand how someone can be self-sufficient and secure in their own worth. To the narcissist, strength represents everything they lack. They cannot comprehend how someone can be unaffected by the external validation they crave so desperately. This feeling of envy drives their desire to tear down those who are strong, to diminish their power, and to remind them that their own fragility is always lurking just beneath the surface. The paradox of the narcissist is that, although they seek control and validation, they are also terrified of being exposed for who they truly are. Strength, therefore, becomes a powerful tool in breaking through this illusion. It shows them that they cannot control everything, that others are capable of thriving without their constant interference. It challenges the narcissist's sense of self and forces them to confront the fear and insecurity they work so hard to conceal. But this exposure doesn't lead to growth or self-awareness for the narcissist. Instead, it triggers their instinct to protect their false identity and to manipulate the situation in order to restore the power they believe they've lost. Strength exposes their insecurities. This truth is often difficult for many people to grasp, especially when they are confronted with someone who presents themselves as self-assured, confident, and unyielding. The narcissist, however, does not respond to strength the same way others might. While many might see strength as admirable, a sign of resilience and inner power for the narcissist, it represents a direct challenge to their fragile ego. Strength, true unshakable strength, reveals the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. It highlights what they are deeply afraid of, that their sense of self-worth is tenuous at best. And if others become too strong, they may no longer be able to rely on the narcissist's usual tactics of manipulation, control, and deceit. For the narcissist, strength is a threat because it signals independence and autonomy. It is a stark reminder that not everyone is dependent on their validation. Not everyone is willing to place their sense of self into the hands of someone else. This is something the narcissist cannot tolerate. Their identity is fragile, built on external sources of validation rather than internal conviction. The moment someone else shows that they are capable, self-sufficient, and resolute, the narcissist feels their world begin to shake. Their sense of power, which is usually rooted in their ability to control or dominate others, is undermined by someone who no longer needs their approval, their praise, or their guidance. This is a profound threat to their identity, and it cannot be ignored. Narcissists tend to rely on a network of individuals who are willing to play into their game of control. They manipulate people's emotions, their sense of self-worth, and their sense of reality to keep them dependent and under their influence. When someone grows stronger, whether by developing a sense of self, learning to assert their boundaries, or simply becoming more confident in their own abilities, it becomes clear that the narcissist is no longer in control. The very thing they depend on to maintain their illusion of power and superiority starts to slip through their fingers. This can be deeply unsettling for a narcissist because it strips away the one thing that has allowed them to maintain a facade of invulnerability: control over others. It's not enough for the narcissist to simply be noticed or acknowledged. They need to be placed on a pedestal, to be seen as superior, to be regarded as more important or capable than anyone else. This drive for superiority feeds their need for control. They can't handle the idea that someone else might be seen as more competent or deserving of attention. If they perceive someone as a threat to their status, whether it's through someone else's accomplishments, presence, or strength, they'll go to great lengths to reassert control. They cannot bear the thought of being in a position where their flaws, insecurities, or deficiencies are exposed. So they must constantly manipulate situations to ensure that they remain the focal point. In relationships with narcissists, this need for control plays out in very destructive ways. They often establish power imbalances where the other person is diminished or gaslighted into questioning their own reality. A narcissist may use guilt, shame, or even blatant lies to control the narrative and keep themselves in a position of dominance. This could manifest as undermining the self-esteem of others, sowing doubt, or even creating false narratives to ensure that their perception of the world is accepted. The key here is that the narcissist's need for control doesn't just stem from a desire for personal comfort. It's a survival mechanism. If they lose control, if they lose the validation they depend on, their entire sense of self is threatened. This need for validation also drives the narcissist to engage in a constant cycle of self-promotion. They inflate their achievements, exaggerate their successes, and often claim credit for things they didn't do. They present themselves as more talented, more successful, more capable than they truly are because, in their mind, only this inflated version of themselves is worthy of admiration. And if others fail to acknowledge their supposed greatness, they can become hostile or combative. The narcissist may retaliate with aggression, passive-aggressive behavior, or attempts to undermine those who don't give them the validation they crave. What's particularly dangerous about narcissists is their ability to disguise their true motives. They can be charming, persuasive, and highly skilled at making others feel important. In the early stages of interactions, they often present themselves as incredibly charismatic, drawing people in with their apparent confidence and charm. This is part of the manipulation. The narcissist wants others to believe that they are worthy of admiration, attention, and validation. Once the narcissist secures this validation, however, they drop the facade and begin to display the more toxic and self-serving aspects of their personality. Ultimately, a narcissist's need for control and validation isn't just about boosting their own ego. It's about managing their deep and abiding fear of being exposed as less than perfect. Their identity is a fragile construct built on external input rather than internal stability. And because of this, any challenge to their narrative, any person or situation that threatens to pull them down from their pedestal is seen as an existential threat. To preserve their fragile sense of self, they will go to great lengths to ensure that their reality is the one that dominates, often at the expense of those around them. In the context of relationships, the narcissist's craving for validation becomes a controlling force that can drain others emotionally, psychologically, and even physically. The narcissist needs constant reinforcement from others, and without it, they can become volatile, aggressive, or disengaged. This relentless demand for validation is not just about praise, it's about survival. To the narcissist, the world is a stage where they must constantly perform. And if they fail to garner the attention they require, the consequences are severe, both for them and for those around them. Now, let's think for a moment about the nature of strength. Real strength, the kind that emanates from within you, isn't simply about physical prowess or intellectual acumen. It's about your ability to stand firm in your convictions, to maintain your sense of self despite the chaos and turbulence of life. But here's something you need to understand. Strength has a strange way of revealing the true character of the people around you. Narcissists thrive on control and validation. At their core, they are deeply insecure individuals, unable to maintain a stable sense of self without the constant reinforcement of others' admiration. This craving for attention, approval, and admiration is the foundation of their behavior. They operate from a position where they need the world to reflect back to them a grandiose image of who they are, often at the expense of others. Their identity is fragile and malleable, which is why they can't bear the thought of not being at the center of attention. In essence, narcissists do not possess a strong or consistent inner sense of self. Instead, they rely on external sources of validation to feel whole and validated in their existence. This need for control and validation manifests in many ways. The narcissist seeks out situations where they can assert dominance, ensuring they remain in the spotlight. They require the admiration of others to feel secure. Their entire world revolves around gaining approval, whether that's through subtle manipulation, grandiose claims, or even more overt acts of self-promotion. Without this constant affirmation, the narcissist's sense of worth begins to crumble. This dynamic often creates a toxic atmosphere where those around them are either forced into roles that affirm the narcissist's inflated sense of self or left behind as they are perceived as threats to their delicate ego. For the narcissist, relationships are rarely about mutual respect or care. Instead, they're transactional. They interact with others primarily as a means to bolster their own image and maintain their fragile sense of superiority. They expect others to cater to their needs and desires without offering anything meaningful in return. The narcissist is a master of using others to prop themselves up, all while offering little or nothing in terms of genuine support or empathy. The narcissist doesn't engage with others for the sake of connection. They engage to extract value, whether that value comes in the form of admiration, influence, or control.